Now recognize the gentleman from Maryland, Representative Ivey, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to join in expressing my gratitude to all of you, not only for being here, but the service that you provided to your communities and to the country. Wanted to follow up on a couple of things. One on the communications front. The FirstNet system, let me ask, because I don't know that Mr. Sullivan, you talked about FirstNet at all. Is Secret Service able to access FirstNet as well?
I do not know, Mr. Ivey. I don't know the answer to that.
All right. Do any of you know if on the day of July 13th, the Secret Service was connected to FirstNet at all?
I have no information of that, if
Okay.
they were or not.
In the walkthrough and the meetings prior to July 13th, were there any discussions about how communications would be had on the day of July 13th?
I know that Secret Service, when the county had referenced their mobile command post on Monday. So I think that's how that was integrated into the rally. So during Thursday meetings with Secret Service, the command post was established at the Farm Show office, the main office there coming through the main gate. So I knew that they were going to have, or Secret Service said they were going to have their representative there, and that's where we opted to put our sergeant in the command post with Secret Service. There were some communications with portables and the radios, but nothing with FirstNet cell phones.
All right, so we had communications with, Commander, you mentioned, I forget the name of the channel, but one of the channels that you used, right? You had people using cell phones, I guess for direct calls and for text communications?
Yes. Yes.
All right, and then you had multiple other radio channels that were being used.
Yes.
Is that right? And some people were using FirstNet and some weren't. Is that all fair?
Correct, yes.
All right, and then you had two separate command posts or communication that had communications going through them. Is that right?
Yes.
So I saw a series of text messages, I think related to spotting the man on the roof who ended up being Crooks. And it was texted because I guess the person who sent the text was uncertain that the radio communications would get to who they had to get to. So were you aware, Commander, that the text messages were being sent on July 13th?
Depending, I definitely knew text messages were being sent. In fact, that's how I got the picture of who we were looking for, so that I could then forward that to the state police sergeant that was in the Secret Service Command Center.
All right, and on July 13th, was there a way to relay that photo directly to the Secret Service using, I don't know, whatever electronic means that you were in connection with the Secret Service with?
I probably could have emailed it to them.
Email, okay.
However, the text message to...
All right, but not exactly
police
the
sergeant.
emergency scenario that this entails. You see a man with, on a roof with a gun, a potential threat to the former president. You don't want to send email, you want to let him know immediately, right?
Correct, and we did have a phone list for the different agents. However, I'd already been speaking with the sergeant in the command center for different things, and it was significantly easier and faster just to send it straight to him.
All right, is it fair to say that this sort of emergency communications on that day hadn't been worked out in advance? Is that fair?
Yes.
All right, so this was sort of making it up as you go along on that day, not in a critical way, but you're just doing what you need to do to communicate with each other under the circumstances and under the time constraints that you had.
Yes.
All right. And I think clearly, Mr. Sullivan, you'd say that that approach to communications is unacceptable under any Secret Service protection scenario. Is
Yes,
that
sir.
fair?
It's absolutely unacceptable.
All right. Couple quick questions to you all. One of the things about resources, and Mr. Sullivan, I know you've talked about how thin Secret Service is stretched, and I share that view. In fact, Congress passed additional appropriations to help address that. My immediate concern, though, is to get more agents up and running. Hiring new agents, as you pointed out, it takes years for a new agent to be prepared and trained to actually step into the role of protection for the president or other senior officials. Is that fair?
Yes, once an agent is hired, it does take years, literally years, to get him or her up to speed to be assigned to that detail.
One question I was just wondering about, recent retirees, is there a way that recent retirees could come back who've been trained in this and have experience, and maybe could be immediately available at least till we get through, I would say, the inauguration cycle.
Secret Service has a retired annuitant program, and there are many retired agents currently working, and they have an exemption so they could collect their salary as well as their annuity.
Is that something that could be accelerated now to get more people into these
The only
roles?
thing they could do is, right now, it's my understanding, there's an age 60 limit. If the Secret Service raised the limit, you may have more people available. But right now, it's my understanding you can't be older than 60 to be a reemployed annuitant.
Okay, and I guess perhaps part of that is for the physicality of the role for people on the scene. But for people providing, for example, advanced leadership and guidance and recommendations, they could step into this role immediately. Would that be fair to say?
They could. They also could step into the role of protective intelligence investigations, which I think is a critical gap right now that needs to be addressed. We need to be able to investigate threats against the president thoroughly and completely.
I appreciate that. And then lastly, let me end on this with respect to the site selection piece. I think, Lieutenant Harold, you testified that there had been a rally, I guess, in 2020 at the airport in the Butler area?
That's correct.
And that was, in your view, a safer site because it was totally...
It was an active airport, so it was fenced in and restricted. So the entire airport is surrounded by a fence, so it would prevent a lot of unnecessary foot traffic or people driving their cars through. There's multiple entrances to the farm show. There's a back gate, there's a front gate. You can come through the hangars off the airport side. So there's a lot of areas to be able to access that venue. So looking just at site, the airport's more secured.
And just when I stepped onto the Butler site, I went with Chairman Green the first time, the shots came from, I guess as the former president would have been facing, the shots came from the AGR building on the right. But I noticed that there was, I don't know, maybe 10 buildings on the left side of the stage as well, including some kind of rodeo stage or something along those lines. Is there other buildings up there?
There were other buildings on site, and I believe that ESU had members in those, I guess it's the grandstand it's called, at the farm show. So there was LE in those buildings.
And there was also a water tower there too, right?
Yes.
Okay. So from the standpoint of ease of protection, putting protection detail in place, Mr. Sullivan, would it be easier if the fewer rooftops you have, the fewer sites that would provide a possible shooting venue for a sniper or an assailant in this instance? Is it easier for the Secret Service and safer for the people, not just the candidate, but obviously, as we saw, the deadly consequences on that day, spectators who come to watch? Is it safer to have it maybe at the airport scenario as opposed to the field?
Well, Mr. Ivey, the safest place to have a rally is indoors, where you don't have the long-range threat problem. If the Secret Service were in decisions-making for the campaign sites, we would always recommend it be indoors, any rally.
Fair enough. And then last point, Mr. Chairman, with respect to that, I know we're not on Florida yet, but I will say this, on the site selection piece, and certainly candidates, and I've been one myself, have a right to rest and relaxation. That golf course is a tough venue to provide the type of protection that we're talking about because of the size of it, the access of the roads all the way around it. They're all public access, limited fencing, high, bushes and things alike. Maybe not the best. Maybe there are golf courses that are on military bases, for example, that would be safer, sort of along the lines of how the airport's safer than the fairgrounds. So I hope we can figure out a way for, as we move forward with these, especially for a rest and relaxation scenario as opposed to a campaign scenario where there's a First Amendment effort to allow a candidate to reach voters or spectators. I think that's the highest priority. Make it best, candidates should be able to pick whatever they want on that scenario, but maybe the R&R is a different scenario. But with that, I yield back and thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to all of you for your service.
Thank you,